I just want to begin by saying I am really, really, really sorry for how long this video took to be released. A lot has been happening in my life, okay? I really wanted to get this done sooner, but I just couldn't. Anyway, let's begin. TomTalks! 2 months have gone by, meaning it's time for the Thomas YouTube show nobody watches! Hello all and welcome to the 15th episode of TomTalks, the programme where we talk about everything to do with Blue Bastard. Now this will be a very different episode of the series, since for the first time, I have a guest star on board. Who'll that be? Wait and see! Take it away, Sheffield! Thomas Land. It's where Thomas really comes alive. Ever since the 1970s, Thomas and his friends have been represented through many real-life replicas, mainly in the form of Days Out with Thomas events at various heritage railways across the UK, US, Japan and Australia to name a few, a handful of live stage shows and performances, a few parades, some creepy-ass statues at Mallow, and
he's fallen in the water!
And then there's the rather noteworthy instance of Thomas replicas, and that, my friends, is the form of amusement parks. I'm not talking about things like that weird Pooh's Adventures arse ride at Hunstanton, that's a story for another Tom Talks. I'm talking about the various parks that bring the island of Sodor to life in remarkable ways. So today, we'll be looking into the various amusement parks themed around the famous tank engine, and a few smaller areas of big parks with Thomas theming. How much did these parks nail the aesthetic of Sodor? Let's find out! We begin, naturally, with the world's first Thomas Land, in a country that always gets it right with this show, Japan. In 1969, Fuji-Q Highland, owned by the Fuji-Q Company, I do apologise if I butchered that, and situated near the foot of Mount Fuji, opened for business. Just under 3 decades later, at the height of Thomas the Tank Engine's popularity, this park would be the home of the very first Thomas-themed amusement park on the planet. The park initially opened with only 4 rides. The most famous of these is Thomas and Percy's Fun Ride, a narrow-gauge railway where Thomas and Percy would essentially take guests on a tour of Sodor. The ride even included a reference to the Series 4 episode, Henry and the Elephant in Henry's Tunnel.
Whoosh!
And later on, presumably a reference to Thomas and the Magic Railroad with Diesel 10 and Lady, the latter of whom was added to the attraction in 2001, but was later replaced with James in 2010. Other attractions at the time of the park's opening included a roller coaster themed around Duncan, based on the Series 4 episode Rock and Roll, a flying ride themed around Harold, a teacup style ride known as Everybody Twist, where you could ride in either Percy, Toby, Bill, Ben, Mavis, or at least one of the 4 Thomases on the ride, and F-Zero Sodor. In 1999, a further 2 rides were added. These were the Exciting Cruise, a log flume ride themed around the Series 5 episodes to Topham Hatt's Holiday, and Mischievous Cranky, a rotating bus ride. Alright. In 2005, a troublesome truck-themed ride would enter the scene, known as the Great Gatagoto Adventure, which is sort of like the Thomas and Percy ride, though is a story-focused ride which contains numerous references to episodes from Series 6 and 7 specifically, and ends with all the engines at Tidmouth Sheds. Also, Gordon has James's inexplicable Series 4 whistle here.
He didn't know that James was boastful.
3 more new attractions would be added over the course of 10 years. These included Go-Go Bulstrode in 2010, which was a clone of the Bulstrode ride at Drayton Manor, which we'll see later. In celebration of the 70th anniversary of the franchise in 2015, a 3D maze was opened, and, as with the Great Gatagoto Adventure, contained episode references. And the newest ride in the park as of 2025 is Harold's Sky Patrol, which is a clone of Harold's Heli Tours, also from Drayton Manor. Look, they didn't even change the ride's name! While there haven't been any new rides since 2020, many existing rides have actually been changed over the course of the park's history to include new theming, and in some cases, different characters. For instance, the F-Zero thingy was replaced with Hopping Winston, a Winston-themed flying elephant ride. Because if there's one thing Winston has, it's his ability to mechana fly.
Ooh, that brother's floating in the air. How could his hands do this?
Later on in 2023, Nia's Animal Coaster opened. As the name implies, this coaster was themed around Nia, and this ride replaced... And more recently, the Everybody Twist ride was modified to now be themed around...
Here comes Elastica!
Some references in rides were changed too. The aforementioned Henry and the Elephant reference in Thomas and Percy's Fun Ride, for example, was changed to be a reference to the Series 1 episode The Sad Story of Henry circa 2017. And in The Great Gatagoto Adventure, the Emily's New Coaches reference featuring Emily and Oliver was completely changed, and now Hero, in a reference to Hero of the Rails, stands in their place. And the Gordon and Spencer reference was also changed, and instead of Spencer, Gordon is seen with... the dinosaur skeleton from Series 9? I'm just as confused as you lot are. And that's it for the world's first and probably best Thomas Land. I definitely want to go here someday, I swear to God. 10 years after the opening of Thomas Land Japan, along came the second amusement park themed around this little loco, and the only of the kind in Europe. And that, of course, is the UK theme park at the one, the only, Drayton Manor. Opened in 1950 on the site of a since demolished manor house near Tamworth in the West Midlands, Drayton Manor is home to a sizable amusement park, which also includes a zoo and guest hotel. The new Thomas Land area was first announced to the public in 2007 and was to serve as a replacement to the area previously themed around Robinson's Fruit Shoot brand. In fact, several rides in Thomas Land at Drayton Manor were modified from the original Robinson's Land rides. For instance, the Frog Hopper became Cranky's Crane Drop, the Arriva Crazy Bus became Crazy Bertie Bus, Whirlycopters became Harold's Heli Tours, the list goes on. Pre-planning for the park began circa February 2006. 18 months later, once everything was approved and permitted, construction of the park started, which was underway for 6 months at a whopping cost of £5.5 million. On the 15th of March 2008, the park was finally ready and open to the public. Within weeks of its opening, Thomas Land quickly became one of Drayton Manor's ultimate claims to fame, partly because the Thomas theming clearly had more sticking power than the previous Robinson's theming, and partly because the park opened at a time when, marketing-wise, Thomas was in his prime.
To have Thomas Land and of course Thomas the Tank Engine coming to Drayton Manor Park has made us one of the happiest families in the UK, to be perfectly honest. This guy's as big as Mickey Mouse for us. It's a real coup for the business.
Many changes were made to this Thomas Land Park over the years, with the first of these occurring a mere year after the park's opening. The first new addition to the park was Rosie joining Thomas and Percy on the Engine Tours ride, likely because she was the most prominent female tank engine at this time, and to have a female engine on the ride. 4 years later, in 2013, the first brand new ride was opened, in the form of Winston's Whistle Stop Tours, where Winston travels above the park giving a sort of skyline view of everything. Okay, what is with Winston and his rides always taking him above the blinking ground? Also, I should note that this ride has a very cute Sodor Railway Company plaque on it, as if it's some old-timey railway bridge or something. That's nice. 2 years later, this park saw a major overhaul, which came to be known as the Thomas Land Expansion. This included the Thomas, Percy and Rosie engines being modified with new CGI-style faces, and an additional 3 rides were opened, including Toby's Tram Express, a twisting barn-style ride, Flynn's Fire Rescue, a firefighting ride, which was actually created as a collaboration between Drayton Manor and the West Midlands Fire Service, and Captain's Sea Adventure, because Captain was such a massive character that every kiddywink in the Midlands demanded he get his own ride. In 2017, a balloon samba ride opened in the park, and was themed around the Series 6 episode James and the Red Balloon. The ride even inherited the name of the episode. The shocked James seen beside the ride was actually the same James that was originally seen outside Knapford Station sleeping. In 2023, the only ride themed around
Stretch Armstrong
was opened, known as Thomas and Percy's Submarine Splash, which was a miniature log flume ride which, aside from the obvious Thomas and Percy, actually had very little to do with All Engines Go. It had as much relation to Thomas as that classic Cars ride, which in fact is the only surviving evidence of Robinson's Land, just with Sodor slapped onto the ride's name. Now, in this park's history, a grand total of 2 incidents occurred. The first of these was when Peter Kay had trouble with his tooth here.
It turned into a bloody abscess. Agony. It all came to an end when I sucked on a slush puppy at Thomas Land.
And the second incident occurred in 2020, when a fire broke out within Le Lavatoire. I see. And now I think it's time to cover the most infamous element of Drayton Manor's Thomas Land. After the model series concluded with Series 12, and the switch to full CGI was imminent, the props used in the show would see no further use and would end up in many different places. These included going into the hands of private owners, being sent to Nitrogen to help the 3D modelers create assets for the upcoming CGI series, and going on display at a couple of museums. Some went to the Hara Model Railway Museum in Japan, while some others were sent to Drayton Manor for use in the 2009 open Discover Thomas and Friends exhibition. Ooh, a full-on model railway exhibition themed around Sodor and uses the props from the show? I wonder how they're doing in there. Jeepers creepers. Look, Thomas models in the hands of big organisations has mostly never been a strong point, but jeez, this is just depressing. These models were just allowed to deteriorate and, in Rosie's case, completely stop working. And then there was the alleged incident that occurred in 2011 where Toby was pinched from the display. Thankfully, circa 2022, the park realised the mistakes they were making with the treatment of these models, and the next year, the exhibition was relocated and completely revamped, with several other characters now joining the exhibition. These are either official models in the form of Spencer, or all new fan-made replicas which had been donated to the park for the new exhibition. And that very much brings us up to date with Thomas Land at Drayton Manor. For now. Get off the stage!
So Thomas Land first opened at Edaville Railroad in 2015 in honor of the franchise's 70th anniversary. The concept of its opening comes from the popularity of the Day Out with Thomas events that started back in the early 2000s, when Edaville began their partnership with the Thomas & Friends brand. The events earned them tons of money, and so in 2014, work began to add a new portion to the Edaville Railroad that featured more Thomas-related attractions as well as 11 rides, with most of these rides based on the ones from Drayton Manor's theme park. And this section, of course, was Thomas Land. The park was meant to open in June of 2015, but had to be opened later that year due to a very harsh winter blizzard delaying construction. The following year, in 2016, many things like the Winston Skyline Ride, the Diesel Works, the Sodor Balloon Shop Model Railway Layout, and the Sodor Ice Cream Company were officially opened shortly after. The attractions went through various changes over time, but out of all the attractions, Titmutt's Sheds had the most interesting changes, including originally planned to have 7 berths, with Edward being one of the engines, then originally planned to be a roundhouse with only 3 berths, and lastly having the engines, albeit Percy with him being interactive, becoming gated in late 2015 to prevent being damaged or climbed by young children. The engines themselves were made from Garner Halt Productions, which they also used for the faces of the Day Out with Thomas replicas. Once it opened, the park instantly became a huge hit with visitors, and in the same year it opened, it was rewarded 3rd place for Best New Amusement Park of 2015. Hot damn, 2015 was a good year for Thomas. Good times. Thomas Land remained successful and was a favorite for all children and families for 4 more years until 2020 when quarantine. Like everywhere else, it had to close for that whole year. Shockingly, when Edaville Railroad reopened in 2021 for the holiday season, Thomas Land, and by extension another section called Dino Land, remained closed, and they would be so for another 2 years. One would think that it wouldn't be long before the theme park would soon open again, but sadly that would not be the case. In early 2023, it was revealed to the public that Edaville recently filed a lawsuit towards Mattel. The lawsuit included wrongdoings such as Mattel tricking the company Railway by using false promises to convince them to license the Thomas brand from Mattel to construct Thomas Land in 2013, Mattel failing to promote Thomas Land with Day Out with Thomas by scheduling very few events, and putting in more efforts with another company to promote another theme park called Thomastown, resulting in railways lost in revenue and less people going to Thomasland. However, in my opinion, the biggest problem of all was when Edaville had a big opportunity to market Thomasland when they discovered a kid with autism made headlines and shared his desire to visit the theme park. They would propose a marketing initiative to Mattel for the kid to visit Thomasland under VIP escort, only for Mattel to not only turn them away, but flat out claim that they, along with the Thomas brand overall, had no interest in getting involved with the autistic community. Unfortunately, because of Mattel's constant poor treatment to Railway in Edaville, Railway would soon lose money and become damaged. The license with Mattel was not renewed and Edaville's Thomasland was soon gone. In November 2023, the attraction was replaced with a new one called Alpine Village, and the area was completely changed during rebuilding. As of 2025, however, most of the rides that were rebranded from the Thomas ones have now been put up for sale.
And to finish, we'll take a little look into the smaller Thomas-themed areas at various amusement parks, beginning with the Thomas-themed ride at Drusilla's Park in East Sussex. Basically, this ride featured Thomas travelling around the park, and the ride also featured other characters beside the line, including James, who looks like he just crapped himself during a job interview, Bulgy, Diesel, and Cranky. The Thomas, Annie and Clarabelle rolling stock were even manufactured by the same people who made the Thomas rides at Six Flags, which we'll get to in just a moment, and Drayton Manor. Sadly, in 2017, Mattel decided not to renew Drusilla's licensing contract, and thus the ride's reign came to an end the same year, and the ride was reworked into...
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Meanwhile, in America, there's another park that suffered the same fate, known as Thomastown. And Sheffield, that's not the Thomastown I'm on about. There we are. This area in Kennywood Amusement Park was actually quite late onto the Thomasland scene, opening in July 2018. As usual, this park featured a Thomas narrow gauge ride, which crashed. It also featured a Diesel's ride, which is basically Sodor classic cars done better, and other attractions include copy-paste Flynn firefighting ride, copy-paste Cranky drop tower, and copy-paste Harold ride because we CBA'd come with original rides hand us your cash. Unfortunately, either due to contract expiration or low attendance, I don't bloody know, I can't find any reason behind it, Thomasland Kennywood died, and now it's received the Drusilla's treatment and has become...
Meanwhile.
Now, regarding the other Thomas-themed amusement park called Thomastown, its most popular location was at Six Flags theme park, which started around 2007 when Six Flags and Hit Entertainment formed a partnership to have Thomas-themed attractions installed in parks in various states of the US. Some included Six Flags New England in Massachusetts, Six Flags Magic Mountain, and Six Flags Discovery Kingdom in California, and Six Flags America in Maryland, which was at one point billed the largest Thomasland in North America with the biggest expansion in over 10 years. The rides were manufactured by German manufacturer Mettelbau Emblem, I'm pretty sure I butchered the hell out of that, who also made Thomas train rides for other amusement parks like Drusilla's Park in the UK, Puteri Harbour in Malaysia, and Drayton Manor in the UK, US, and Japan. Some rides in these numerous locations were based on ones from Thomasland at Drayton Manor, including Diesel Derby, or Demolition Derby as it's called in Thomasland, Birdie Bus, and the Harold the Helicopter ride. For some time, Thomastown remained a success, but soon it wasn't to last. In 2009, Six Flags faced an unfortunate bankruptcy, and to cut costs, removed Thomas and Friends as well as several licensed characters from their parks as they were too expensive to keep operating. Eventually, around 2011 to 2012, Thomastown became overhauled into the now Whistletop Park in most of its Six Flags locations across the country, save for the Discovery Kingdom location, which was changed into the newer Seaside Junction.
So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how the major Thomasland parks we know today came to be. Have you guys ever been to any of these parks? Be sure to tell us of your Thomasland experiences in the comments. Now before I end, I would like to give a very big thank you to my brilliant friend Callie, aka Chew the Train Goddess. We've been planning our own collab for at least 2 months now, and I'm so happy we finally got to achieve it. Thanks again for joining in with this video, Callie. Now just a reminder, if you have any Thomas topic you want me to discuss for Tom Talks, don't hesitate to share your ideas. Once again, I am extremely sorry for how late this video was to be released, but I would like to thank you all for your patience. That's it for now, thank you all for watching, And now it's time for me to skedoodle off to Wales.